Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda. Spiritual culture. Spiritual culture. Society. Devotional culture. In a group session recently, discussing a purport, Prabhupada's purports in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada describes how a person without a spiritual master is like a ship without a rudder. So then some questions came up because there was discussion about the different types of spiritual masters. There's the initiating spiritual master and then the instructing spiritual masters. There can be many of those, but there's only one initiator. And that's the way spiritual culture works. Because it's a culture. And those that are taking part in that culture, then this is just how it works. Krishna's arrangement. Well, he says in Bhagavad Gita, just try to learn the truth by approaching a bona fide spiritual master. Inquire submissively and render service. Ta-da! Spiritual culture. That's the foundation. So I was looking at, because the Chaitanya Charitamrita has been presented by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. And he very often glorifies his spiritual masters, the 6 Goswamis. So I asked a question in the group. Every time I ask a question, it brings up more questions. Like, I'm afraid to ask a question. I'm not trying to challenge anybody. I just want to know. It's interesting to me. So I asked a question so Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is glorifying his instructing spiritual masters, the 6 Goswamis. What kind of contact did he have with them so that he would receive instructions from them? Were they actually on the planet at the time? Did he consult with them? Did he render service and inquire? How did that relationship with those Goswamis, how was it formed? Or were they not present and he was taking instruction from their writings only? So the devotees confessed that they didn't know about the actual history surrounding Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and suggested that would be a good research project for me. to do, and then report back. That's the second time that's happened in that group. So so I'll be trying to take a look at what kind of the nuts and bolts of how the interaction between Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and his instructing gurus. What were the nuts and bolts? Did there have to be vapu, or could there simply be vani? Be taking a look at that. Of course, Krishna consciousness is we forget Krishna is a supreme mystic and he can do anything. And there are always extraordinary circumstances. But in general, the general guideline for 99.9% of those involved in a spiritual culture, sometimes, there's something outside the ordinary. But 99.9% of the time, or something like that, how does this work? And I think the reason I'm finding it so interesting is because there are many, many devotees now who are kind of like do-it-yourself program. Prabhupada's in his books. That's all I need. And many people coming to the movement that, Prabhupada's in his books. That's all I need. But Prabhupada, so that's why I want to try to understand this a little bit better. how this works, and to see what kind of interactions were there between Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and his instructing gurus. Because it's very popular now to just say, well, he's my Shiksha Guru. My Prabhupada's my Shiksha Guru. But I've never met him, and I don't particularly take guidance from any of his initiated disciples. And I don't like ISKCON, but Prabhupada's my spiritual master. He's my instructing guru. What comes to mind in that situation, as Prabhupada says, without a spiritual master, a devotee is like a ship without a rudder. And he says it's very, very difficult to make advancement on the spiritual path. Very, very difficult. So when we look at the Krishna consciousness movement as a culture, we see what the mores, the standards of the culture are. And there are three types of interaction for devotees in a spiritual culture. One is to take shelter of those more advanced. So they become like instructing gurus or the initiating guru. It can be both. Initiating guru can both be instructor and initiator. But they may be an initiating guru and then many instructing gurus. But they're taking shelter of an advanced devotee. Whether it's formally labeled Shiksha Guru or it, in a practical sense, is Shiksha, instruction, without some big titles or something. And then another way people in a spiritual culture relate to each other is as friends, that more or less on the same level of realization and advancement And they make friendships. They reveal their minds in confidence. They share prasadam. They give gifts. They discuss together and explore the teachings in the scriptures. They're friends. And then another way people relate to each other in a spiritual culture is the person, if someone is less advanced, they try to help them, give them guidance, encouragement, association, like that. So there's always someone more advanced, and there's always those that are more or less on the same level, and there are always those that are trying to make some advancement, and they're less advanced, less realized, struggling more with material concepts and attachments. They've got a lot to get rid of. So looking at this do-it-yourself program, which is very popular with many people, I'm wondering if Prabhupada, I don't say this offending anyone, I'm just looking at this, okay? I'm trying to look at it objectively, try to understand. I'm wondering if Prabhupada could be anyone's Shiksha Guru. After he's disappeared. I'm wondering. Now, he's in his books and his instructions for everyone. So in that sense, he's like instructing Guru, Shiksha Guru, because he's left instructions. But he's also a founding acharya, which makes things a little different. It's like right now I'm reading the Ramayana. It's a condensed version, but it's wonderful, about Lord Ram. We're chanting Hare Ram all the time, so who is this Ram, right? So, what are his pastimes? What's the story on this? Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, it was composed by Valmiki, who was a great ascetic, performed many austerities, and was blessed by Narada Muni to be able to present the pastimes of the incarnation of the Lord in his Ramachandra appearance, Sitaram. But does that mean that he's my Shiksha Guru, Valmiki? Or I read sometimes Bhakti Siddhanta's writings, they're wonderful. I love the way Bhakti Siddhanta writes. Such a dry sense of humor. He's wonderful. It's like, he's so cutting, but it doesn't hurt. It's wonderful. He's wonderful, his writings are wonderful. Does that mean he's my Shiksha Guru? So, but he's in his books. Rupa Goswami is in his books. Valmiki is certainly in his book. Vyasadeva, he's in his books. Srimad Bhagavatam. Does that mean Vyasadeva is my Shiksha Guru? Not directly. Not directly. we go through the disciple of the disciple of the disciple of the disciple. That's the spiritual culture. Otherwise, it's a ship without a rudder. And Prabhupada said there'll be very many difficulties, so many difficulties on the path. There's already difficulties, but there'll be so many difficulties. Because it's a culture. It's not a do-it-yourself program. I was remembering one account in the Mahabharata that when I read this a while ago, I mean, it was like, wow. You know, there's a lot of wows in the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, but this one was a super wow. Super wow. It's the account of Sakalendriya. I know, is that his name? Sakalendriya? There was somebody, my memory. Let me see. Google knows. Google's so smart. Oh no, I don't know if I can find his name. Oh, I can. Hare Krishna. I can find him. Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Memory like Swiss cheese. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Okay. Here's Hare Krishna. Oh no. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Krishna. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Krishna. Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna Chaitanya. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. All right, let me try this. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right, here we go. You get the right page here. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Oh boy. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Can't find it. One more shot at it. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. All right, there it is. Ekalavya. That's the one. Ekalavya. Not Sakalandriya. Ekalavya. Okay. Briefly, what happened with Ekalavya was he wanted to be a great archer. And he took shelter of Dronacharya, who was Arjuna's spiritual teacher in the military arts. So they were students, Ekalavya and Dronacharya, but Dronacharya favored Arjuna, and he wouldn't accept Ekalavya. I believe it was on the grounds that Ekalavya didn't come from the right kind of varna. His caste was too low or something like that. But Ekalavya was so determined. He was so determined, even though he was turned away by Dronacharya, that he performed austerities. That's what everybody does, right? Perform austerities. I'm going to hold my breath until I turn blue, until you do what I want. He went into the forest in seclusion, and he made a deity of Dronacharya, whom he considered his spiritual master. And he practiced archery as his worship of his deity, of Dronacharya. But Dronacharya had said, no, I don't want you to learn archery. I don't want to teach you. But Ekalavya didn't take that for an answer because he wanted something. So he had an agenda. I want to be the greatest archer in the world. But that was for Arjuna, not for Ekalavya. So Ekalavya went off by himself. And he practiced archery. And he became a very, very great archer. And one day Dronacharya and Arjuna were walking through the forest, and they noticed a dog. This is not very nice, but they noticed a dog whose mouth had been shut with arrows. Immediately Dronacharya wondered, who is the archer that can do this kind of thing? And then Ekalavya presented himself before Dronacharya and offered obeisances as, you're my spiritual master, and I've learned archery by your mercy. Dronacharya didn't want that. Ekalavya had become more talented in archery than Arjuna, and that was not what Dronacharya wanted. So he didn't please his spiritual master just by becoming a great archer. He actually displeased him very much. So the way the story goes is Dronacharya said, oh, my disciple, yes. Well, you know, it's customary, and it is the standard that the student offers the Guru Dakshini. You have to make an offering to the spiritual master. And he goes, oh, yes, my spiritual master. And Dronacharya asked for his right thumb. So that was it. No more archery for Ekalavya. I mean, how you can't, you don't have a thumb, you can't, So Ekalavya, he went against the way things work in a spiritual culture. He went off by himself and tried to do it yourself. But it wasn't what the spiritual master wanted. Just that he become a great archer. It wasn't what he wanted. It didn't fit the plan, the overall plan. Krishna's overall plan. So that's really instructive about relationship with the spiritual master. and how spiritual cultures actually work. So I want to take a look at Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami and how he was taken. We know that Lord Nityananda came to him in a dream and instructed him to go to Vrindavan and find shelter there. So that's a little unusual. Krishna, but they were on the planet at the time. Krishna, Chaitanya, and I believe Nityananda. Anyway, I want to look into this. How someone like Krishnadas Kaviraj, so empowered to present so beautifully the pastimes of Gauranga. Who was he initiated by? Was he initiated? Was it necessary? Hare Krishna. Because these are big issues for the movement in its present form. These are big issues, especially in the West, where everybody is, self-made. Everyone's, and Horatio Alger, that was a book or something around the turn of the century, 1900. Horatio Alger, everybody is self-made success. Hare Krishna. Interesting stuff. And I feel so fortunate that I'm situated in such a way that I can have the time and the peace of mind to actually look at these things. It's quite relishable, actually. Try to understand Krishna consciousness. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama.